A high-level probe has been launched into the Starlink signals case in Bharat. All top agencies have been roped in. All top agencies have been roped in for the probe, including the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, or MeitY, National Technical Research Organization, or the NTRO, and intelligence agencies in order to find out more. Now, this has happened after two major incidents have signaled the use of Starlink satellite communication devices despite denial from Elon Musk. The Andaman police is in touch with Starlink after the recovery of more than 6,000 kilograms or 13,000 pounds of meth aboard a Myanmar boat. Now, this boat was carrying sacks of suspected contraband. There were 6 Myanmar nationals who were detained and their routes were negotiated with the help of Starlink devices. That's what the cops found out. Sources say the device has an unmatched capability to create a Wi-Fi hotspot in areas, helping smugglers and traffickers. Sources are also telling CNN News 18 that even though Starlink regulatory approval is pending in Bharat, concerns have been raised over signals being found in the border areas, both on sea and on land. Even in Manipur, adjoining Myanmar, this was noticed. During a raid in December 2024 that was conducted in the Kera Khunu area of Imphal East, where arms and ammunition were found, Myanmar-based research group possibly gave these handheld to rebel groups. That's what sources are telling us. There is more information which suggests that this is actually a password-free device. There's no need to log in, and it was found during a raid. And according to senior cops, Manipur's People's Liberation Army, or PLA, which is a Manipur-based organization, has used Starlink devices during shutdowns because the PLA initially accessed the service in Myanmar. And they later found that some of these Starlink devices, these devices are working in some areas of Manipur also. Perhaps because the borders are not very clearly defined. Sushant Sareen, Senior Fellow ORF, is with us, and Paujal Chauba, Executive Editor of The Frontier in Manipur, is also with us. My namaste to you gentlemen. Please tell our viewers, Mr. Chauba, is this a concern? Is it because the borders are not very clearly defined there that this could happen?
I think that everything is possible. What is happening in Manipur, the rest of India knows. We're in a 20-month conflict right now. And at this impasse, there is no hope. There's no light at the end of the tunnel still. But however, as you can see that Manipur, as we are close to Myanmar. And even before this conflict happened, our border, which is around like 400 kilometers, is a very porous border.
Okay.
And its affinity, and also with the Golden Triangle, there's a lot of smuggling of arms, drugs, meth, you name it. Everything is like available in the black market in many places, especially in Myanmar. All the AK-47s, all the arms and these weapons, which even the Indian government still does not have, including Austrian made pistols, you name it, AK-47, M16 rifles, which was there in the recoveries of the police. And we can see that there are a lot of arms and ammunition which are not made in India, but what rather it is smuggled from other countries, Myanmar, and Chinese-made weapons. So, of course, along with that comes various other electronic equipments like drones, spyware, and of course, this communication device of Starlink. We were the first one who brought out this news because when I looked into the press release, which was given to us by the police, they said it was an international satellite communication device. But with a closer look, it turned out to be a Starlink device. So we brought it out, and this was the first one which the police, along with the paramilitary troops, had seized in a raid at Imphal East, which is around like 10 kilometers and almost within the heart of the Imphal area.
Right.
So I believe that, of course, this satellite is being a device, the Starlink device is being used because Manipur has suffered a lot of internet shutdowns in the past, at least 4 times.
So in your investigation, allow me to interrupt you, please. In your investigation, or when you got to know and you reported this first, like you said, did you try and test this out? Did the cops try and test it, whether it is working in and around the border areas with Myanmar? Or is there any signal being received? Because Elon Musk has said that these signals are disabled over Bharat. But what did you find?
From my sources, I have found out that it was working, but
Oh, okay.
legally I cannot go to the police and
Got it.
ask them to say that whether it was working or
Correct.
not. It's currently under investigation. So they have put
But your sources
this.
confirm that it was working on Indian soil. It was working in
Of course.
Manipur.
Otherwise, what would be the need to bring it over here? That is one thing. And our the proximity with you had pointed out earlier, with Myanmar is very close.
Right.
And like say 25 kilometers in the eastern part, you can just cross over to the border, to the Myanmar side.
Correct.
And from there, people can come in, different things. And the porous border is like a 400-kilometer line. So from any point of the border, people can smuggle in weapons, people can bring in things. It happens all the time. So I believe that, and from my sources, that it was working.
So, phenomenal that you tell us this, and that corroborates with what the Andaman police also seized on the sea level. Now, there again, the international waters, the border area, is this possible, Sushant Sareen? Because this brings back what could happen with the Pakistani communication lines and their towers, mobile towers close to along the LOC, and those working on the Indian side. So similar aspect. Is that possible? And that too, but Elon Musk has said geo satellites, and then the moment the Indian border starts, it's disabled, it can't work. But if this is possible, then we have a concern.
So, it's as far as mobile signals are concerned, it's easy to, in a sense, block them, even intercept them. I'm not so sure about the Starlink internet signals or communication systems. But you remember there was a time when you had the Thuraya phones.
Yes.
And initially, when the Thuraya phones came, they were supposed to be foolproof, right? Or it was the terrorists' go-to communication system until the Russians, located a signal from, I believe, a Chechen warlord and bombed the hell out of the guy. And that is when people realized Thuraya is not that easy, and now nobody hears of Thuraya anymore. So Starlink is the new Thuraya, if I can use that phrase. But the thing is, it probably is a little more complicated intercepting and blocking these signals, but it's not impossible, number one. Number two, in the case of Manipur, it is possible that there could be some spillover of the signals in the border regions, maybe a couple of kilometers into the Indian borders. I'm not sure that you can precisely block signals according to how the border runs, especially in those kind of regions where there are dense forests and these are very remote regions, some of them. The same would apply probably in the Andamans, because at one level beyond 12 kilometers of sea, it's international waters, right? So technically you are allowed to use them, and an equipment like Starlink would be, I think, extremely useful for ships, for any maritime vessel for that matter. And of course, it would then, of course, be used by pirates, smugglers, all kinds of other characters would also partake in it. So it is possible that in the Andamans, the recovery was partly because, again, the Myanmar factor was there. And in Myanmar, for example, a lot of the rebel groups tend to use Starlink. Now, Myanmar really doesn't have a very functional government right now. And we know that organizations like Starlink, for example, in Ukraine, they have provided the most reliable internet signals,
Yes.
right? The internet and communication signals through Starlink. Even in some other parts of the world, hotspots, Elon Musk, in his activist role, has decided that he's going to provide those facilities out there. Now, in Myanmar, for example, where the Americans are extremely hostile to the junta out there, and there is a kind of a civil war going on, there are a lot of rebel groups which would want to use something like the Starlink communication facilities. And some of those guys are, of course, there's an intersectionality between them and some of the drug smugglers and others along the length and breadth of Myanmar. So it is quite possible that, it was because of that they've come into India. But it's important to understand that I don't think a guy like Elon Musk would want to risk the operation of Starlink in India by violating Indian rules and regulations, because already the negotiations with the government of India are at a fairly advanced stage. There are a couple of Indian companies also making a pitch for satellite internet
Right.
connections. And so he wouldn't want to lose out on that race, a market as big as India. I don't think that there would be any nefarious reasons why some of those signals are spilling over into the Indian border states or some parts of
No, but there
Indian
has to be a way that this can be tracked. Paujul, quickly,
might be
just
easier.
let me just ask him
If
if
we actually have Starlink facilities in India, because then I'm sure the licensing requirements would require ability to intercept
no, but
communications as well.
but even if these porous borders are there, and if is the range more than just 1 or 2 kilometers along the border, Paujul Chaba? Final word. And
Yes.
is there a mechanism how this can be tracked?
For the mechanism, I'm not sure because I'm not an expert on the subject. But what I know is that the Starlink device was working and it was communicating in Manipur. So even then, the border might be at least like say 25 to 30 kilometers from the place where the satellite this device was found. But I'm pretty sure that it was being used, and it was able to be, utilized during the times of internet shutdown in Manipur, which has been happening incessantly. Like it was clamped down by the government at least by 4 times, 3 months, 4 months, etc.
Right.
Like that. That is the issue. So I believe that the people who have sourced this particular device
Right.
have used it for communication purposes.
Right. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, gentlemen, for your thoughts. And let's hope this concern is addressed sooner than later. But clearly, those with devious plans look for newer ways and tend to adopt new technology faster than those who are happy with the conventional modes and want to use it for a greater good. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, clash of Bharat-Bangladesh at the Bharat-Bangladesh border, and it's the locals who are trying to thwart and help the BSF push back smugglers and also provocation from the other side. Stay with us.